All right, we are here for episode 25 of the Trilogy Lacrosse Theater. Joining us today, Coach Bill Daye, Coach BD, coming in from, where are you logging in from, Coach BD?
Hingham, Massachusetts.
Beautiful South Shore, Massachusetts. Coach Daye is a multiple national champion winner, as you can see over the shoulder at UNC. And I forgot, I was going to say it's been a while since UNC had won one, maybe since you'd been there, but they just won a couple years ago with Cliche. I completely forgot about that, and then I had to do my research and look that up. So
yeah, that was well, just to set their record straight, it was actually one national champion. That was my sophomore year championship, but we were fortunate enough to be in the Final Four all 4 years, and then the national championship team twice. My senior year, we lost to Syracuse.
Got it. That's right. I thought you guys. It was 91 and 93, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I was looking at these notes a bit suspiciously there, BD, and he brought up like the two titles or to the one. And I'm like, who's the quality control expert on this? Because last time I checked, because I was coached by Brooks Matthews.
That's right.
And so I knew about the 91 title, and I'm looking down, and I'm like, 93? I don't know about that, actually. Because it was quite the drought. 91 until, just a couple of years ago.
25 years to be exact. That's why it's funny. This is episode 25. So, it was our 25th anniversary and down in Philly. And that's when both the men's team and the women's team won the championship in 2016. So it was a pretty sweet weekend.
Did they win other sports as well that year? I feel like it was like a banner year for North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm not sure what, but we usually do win multiple national championships. Just saying. Soccer, field hockey, baseball's been in the Elite Eight a few years. It's just, it's basketball was not. Was basketball 16? I think basketball was 17 actually, but I could be wrong. I'm getting old.
Well, that Carolina blue, we like it at Trilogy. Very similar hue to the Trilogy colors. So I'm somewhat partial there, and I just can't stand Duke, even though we just talked to Ned earlier this week. BD, how did you get into lacrosse? I know you grew up in Long Island, but what made you want to play lacrosse, and specifically, what made you want to play goalie?
A great question. So I didn't start playing lacrosse until 8th grade. I was actually a Little League baseball player forever. And when we switched from the Little League field to the Babe Ruth field, when I turned 13, I was in 8th grade, my skills just went away. I mean, literally could not hit the ball from the, just that extra distance from the mound to the plate. So I went from being a starter, whether it was a catching or first base, and hitting 2, 3, or 4, to basically sitting on the bench and coming in for mop-up time and getting stuck out in the outfield. And I'll never forget, we were playing a night game. I was playing left field in like the 6th or 7th inning, and there was a rocket hit right towards me. And anyone who knows baseball knows that the first thing you're supposed to do on a fly ball is take 2 steps back so you can gauge. And I just came sprinting in, and I was like, all of a sudden I turn around and I start sprinting back. The ball goes over my head into the fence. After the inning's over, I go back to the dugout. My coach is yelling at me. I'm like, that's it, I'm done. So a good friend of mine who you guys may know, Mark Millen, and I grew up. We actually played Little League baseball together as well. He was just like, BD, you got to try lacrosse. And bought my first brine Magnum, and I was pretty much over his house like every day, just working on my stick, trying to learn the game and learn the skills. And 8th grade, middle school, I played midi and had a blast. It was fun. And then 9th grade, we needed a goalie for JV, and once again Mark was involved because we used to play roller hockey. And I could skate, but I wasn't a great skater, so I would play goalie. And then Mark would be in the other goal, and we literally be flopping around, making saves, and we had like 1-0 games or 2-1 games because it would just be insane. And he's like, BD, you should play goalie, man. It's just like street hockey. You'd be great at it. So I listened to him, and freshman year in high school, our JV team was 18-3. Mark obviously led the scoring, and I put on every single pad you can imagine.
I was going to ask you. I asked if you came in with a blocker and a catching glove ready to go.
Shoulder pads, arm pads, chest protector. I had cut off football pants on underneath my shorts, volleyball knee pads, and soccer shin guards. So I was making saves, just kick saves and stuff like that. So that's how
but
it all started.
that makes sense coming from street hockey, right? Because you've got all those pads on in terms of wearing it from a hockey perspective. So
let me ask you this: was the roller hockey? Was this like an organized league, or was this like pickup with like buddies in the streets, actual street hockey?
It was pickup, but it was organized in the way where we had guys who would, make sure we had enough guys on each team. We would play at our tennis courts, and we played a 3-period game. And we played probably 2 or 3 times a week.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, I love those kind of stories. Like, who were we talking to? Roy Colsey was talking about growing up in Yorktown, where they would play in this guy's yard, and then they would he'd open the window and yell out the window the score to the college games, and the kids would stop playing, and then he'd slam the window down, they keep playing again, which I love those old school. That's where I feel like that's where the most competition and the most love for sports gets instilled, is in those kind of backyard games where you have a lot of fun and you're doing it with your buddies and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there was no social media or even phones back then. Video games were, I think there was Atari 2600, but that's it. So life was different back then. We were outside a lot.
Well, I think on top of that, there's no coach and there's no refs, right? So it's the straight up figure it out. So you're kind of coaching yourself. You're kind of watching other people oh, wow, that guy's really good. What does he do? Right. And then, if you get checked or pushed or fouled, just pick up hoops. It's all right, am I going to call this or am I not going to call this? What's the leeway? What do I want this game to be like? So I think that's the other thing is kids feeling empowered and being in a position where they just got to figure things out on their own.
Good point.
Fist fights? Were there fist fights in those games?
We didn't get, there were some times where it got very competitive, like Ryan just said, and we were going after each other, but never to an all-out brawl. A couple of guys would drop the gloves and start pulling on each other, but then we're all right, come on, let's go break it up. We got to keep playing. We got to be home by 5.
We got a game to play, guys.
Exactly.
And for me, BD, and maybe it was different. My backyard was also there was a bunch of different ages. And so Mitch, there was never any fights because it was oh, I'm not fighting that guy. There was a clear hierarchy in terms of my oldest brother. It's yeah, I'm not messing with him. I'm not gonna make it back to the house, And so it's you had to kind of know how to be annoying. And maybe this is just coming from a younger brother perspective, but BD, did you have those different age groups? Because everything now is the same grad year, right? The same age, where it's I think part of the fun of kind of back in the day, what was kind of that hierarchy in terms of age and size, physical size.
Yeah, I mean that's spot on, because that was probably the coolest thing. I was playing with, I was a freshman playing with sophomores, juniors, even some of the seniors who were out there skating around. So that was my sort of chance to be cool, playing street hockey, roller hockey with the older kids, and just playing my part and having fun at the same time.
And what was the so you start as a freshman goalie and have some success in that freshman year, and then obviously go on to join one of the most storied programs, and how did that, where did that transition take place where you're oh, this is something I can pursue, and then how did Carolina happen for you?
Another great question. I was actually just talking about this last night to a couple of buddies who were over. So I high school career, basically after my freshman year starting goal, then I went up to varsity, backed up Ray Suris, who ended up playing at UMass back in the day. Backed him up for 2 years. So my sophomore year, I was kind of just like a bench guy. I came off the bench and played man down if we had a couple of penalties, but I was mainly on the bench. And then junior year, Ray was a senior, so I actually played midi that whole year. Midi and man up, scored like 15 or 16 goals, and then tried out for the Empire State Games that summer as a goalie. So, there was no club lacrosse, as you guys know back then. There was like all the college coaches were on the sidelines of Long Island tryouts. It was just lined up with coaches. So that's pretty much where I've sort of got my look.
Did you
Empire State Games.
Did you want to play goalie? Did you think you had a better shot at goalie? Why did you do goalie as opposed to midfield?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was a quarterback in football. I was a catcher in baseball mainly. That was my main spot in baseball. And then goalie just seemed like a natural fit of sort of that role that sort of, has the same
coach on the field, organizer.
Yeah, that leadership sort of role. You're just very vocal. So it was just a natural fit for me. I mean, I enjoyed midi, don't get me wrong, but it's, after that Empire State Games tryout, actually, Kevin Barry, I don't know if you remember that name. He was from Lynbrook, another goalie who ended up going to Hofstra, but we were both being recruited to North Carolina at the same time. And they told us both, we would love both of you to come here. And, whoever doesn't make it in goal, the other one will be a midfielder, because he played a little midi in high school as well too. So it's just something about being in goal that I enjoyed more than, running up and down the field, I guess.
How many years into your high school career was it? Like each year, did you lose a little bit more padding? Like sophomore year, you took off the shoulder pad. Junior year, you got rid of the elbow pads.
After my freshman year, I sort of figured it out. Like, okay, I can't be looking like this. So I took it all off my sophomore year and playing varsity, and then I started wearing shorts my junior year, and then that was it.
Awesome. And then UNC, I saw in a past interview, you talked both your parents are from North Carolina originally, right? So was it always, you were just like, that was, as you got that attention, were you like thinking, if I can go to UNC, I'm going to UNC first thing, if they give me an offer?
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually thought I was going to be playing football for North Carolina, to be honest. I had North Carolina football memorabilia in my room growing up. I wanted to be a Tar Heel from day one. I didn't think I had no clue it was going to be playing lacrosse. That's probably the funniest part of the story. But, I was just like a lot of guys coming out of high school. I had a few different options, but, when I went down to North Carolina, it just sealed the deal. It did. I actually canceled my trip the next week to Virginia.
What was it when was it the guys on the team, the coaching staff, the culture, the school, like the cool colors? What was it? You're like, I'm in. I mean, obviously you've always dreamt of being there. It's very rare that reality matches with our dreams, right? It's like you probably built it up so much it almost had to have been a letdown, and yet it wasn't.
Yeah, it was a combination of many things. Colors were definitely on top of the list. I'm not gonna lie. That Carolina blue is special. Hence why Trilogy is that direction. But I stayed with John Webster, Mike Acey, and Dan Donnelly. So I had that crew, and Dan Donnelly was a fellow Long Island guy. So was Ace, and Webby was cool. And it's just everything about it. I mean, Carolina obviously back then too was very, very, very competitive, and just everything about it, the weather, and then just obviously the academic of the school was great. It was just a perfect fit, and it's just like Coach Gross called me in his office Sunday morning, and I remember just being like, had a serious headache, and I was just like, oh boy, And he goes, hey, I would love for you to be a Tar Heel. And I was like, I'm in. And that was it. That was it. Seems like yesterday.
It's awesome. And so you get there in 1990, and so you kind of worked your way up the depth chart, right? You had was there a senior goalie that started in 90 I saw, and then it was 91 where you got an opportunity to get a little bit more playing time.
So 1990, Andy Piazza, he was a transfer from Nassau. So he was actually a junior. And then we had a walk-on, great guy, Lars Peterson. And, Coach Scroggs, basically, he wanted me to push Andy and compete for the starting job as a freshman. And I came in with that mindset. Probably the biggest thing for me coming from, a pretty good high school program where competition, for the most part, was high level. It was just the speed of the game was so much different. And, the speed and then the athleticism of everyone around you, and all of a sudden the ball's moving that much faster and that much accurate, more accuracy on their shots. It just took me a little bit to really get used to it. So fall ball was like so, and then got a couple of opportunities early in the season where we were playing some not so great teams, and I wasn't where I needed to be. So freshman year was kind of a bust, to be honest with you, from my perspective. But sophomore year, I came back with a different mentality. Andy was a senior. I felt like I was in a better place, and pushed him pretty hard preseason. And then, it's got a great opportunity in the national championship game when he got a penalty. And that was sort of it. That's sort of my claim to fame. With those two saves up in the dome and then outlet for a fast break goal. And then we went on to win that championship. And, like attackmen, middies, defensemen, a lot of guys play, goalies, as we all know, being coaches, really one guy plays. So to have the opportunity to play in a national championship game as a backup goalie and do what you're supposed to do, and that's do your job, was pretty freaking special and pretty cool. And that really helped with build up the confidence.
What was the culturally going from Long Island down to North Carolina? How was that adjustment? And also curious, what were the guys like that it sounds like there was a couple Long Island guys. What was the mix of players on the team?
That's it was probably 40% Long Island, 40% Maryland. So you had MIAA, the BLs, the Gilmans, and then you had Long Island guys. So we used to have a joke, you got the finesse and then you got the toughness, So New York, Long Island would bring the toughness and the Maryland guys would give you that finesse. But and then we had a couple, the 15, 20% were like upstate New York and then maybe a little Philly and then just kind of sporadic. But guys were all great. I mean, it's like any team. I think that's, it's with everything going on in the world today, we often reference team sports and how that camaraderie just brings you together, no matter where you're from, what your economic background is, what color skin you are. It's just, it doesn't matter when you're on a team. And that was the best thing about, people ask me, you're down the South. I didn't really, I was always with those group of guys for the 4 years that had nothing else really outside of that affected me. So it was just a special group all the way from, the seniors that I was under as a freshman up to when I graduated. Just a real great group of men.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. Obviously you were a pioneer in terms of the first Black player in the MLL. And I got to imagine probably a rare number of Black players when you were playing in the early 90s in the NCAA. And you mentioned, within the dynamics of the team, you felt like were the North Carolina Tar Heels, right? But did you feel like you had pressure on you to represent the Black community, to be a voice of the Black community, or did it not even feel like that because you're so singularly focused on the season?
it did. I didn't feel like I had pressure to represent the Black community. I felt like I had pressure as a Black man playing a sport that was, back even when I played, it was probably 96, 95%, white, that I felt like I needed to perform to show that I belonged. I think that's where the pressure came from, and that was put on by myself.
And I guess, obviously, so much is going on right now in terms of Black Lives Matter and the sport. There's been so much efforts in terms of creating more diversity and more participation. Would love to get your perspective, as Mitch alluded to, kind of being one of the pioneers back then, to kind of how you see things now. And have we made any strides? Have we made a few strides? I mean, it's like, and I recognize we have so much farther to go, but just I would love to hear your perspective in terms of some areas where you feel there's been some positive changes, and where there's some specific areas where it's like we're still, guys, like we can't even look up and see the top of the hill yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2:58. I mean, I don't know if we want to be on here for an hour and a half, 2 hours, because this is something I can talk about for so long. Seriously.
Yeah.
I've had so many conversations since, the death of George Floyd. At first, it started off being uncomfortable, which I'm sure you've heard and everyone's heard. You got to get comfortable having the uncomfortable conversations, because it's not easy talking about race. Where now I've been on some Zoom calls with the University of North Carolina men's lacrosse team, talking to them, and other teams, as well as with Nike. We're just having conversations, so it's good. From a lacrosse perspective, it's great. As Kyle Harrison and Chaz Woodson say, to see more brown legs out there. There's no doubt about it. I still think we have a long way to go, and I just think it's more kind of like how I alluded with myself. It's like, I knew I was a great athlete, but I didn't know how I was going to do on the lacrosse field. I felt like I could compete and I could play at a high level, but at the same time, there's so much pressure because I was the only one out there, and it's like, that looks weird. What's he doing playing this sport? And I think in certain areas there's more acceptance than others, just like the everyday conversation of race. In certain areas, people don't think there's racism. And in certain areas there are. It's just a fact. And it was a comment on one of the calls I was on where, when you look at just the country in general, not everyone's racist. I mean, there's not a lot of racism out there. Like I said, there's certain areas. I just think people are unaware, right? And that's probably the biggest part of the conversation that I've been involved in, is just explaining what life as a Black person is every day. I mean, I live in a town where my wife grew up, in Hingham, Mass. It's beautiful, beautiful town. It's right on the water. It's 99.6% white population. So really, I probably wouldn't be living here if it wasn't for the fact that, we got a great situation with the house. And I probably wouldn't be as comfortable as I am here if it weren't for lacrosse. The fact that, my background, coach for Boston, it's a big lacrosse town. There's 600, 700 families playing lacrosse. That's sort of my support system. Outside of that, I mean, people are just probably wondering why there's a Black man walking in downtown Hingham. I'm serious too, and that's a scary thing. It's like, and that's sort of how, the everyday oppression is. How you've heard people explain it. It's like, walking out of the house. I got to be careful what I'm wearing at what time of the day. If I'm driving home at night, I got to be very aware of that. Hey, I got to, if it's a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, I'm going 25, 26. I don't want to go too slow, because I just, those are just things that I constantly think about. And that's what, everyday life of a Black man is like. And I think, the more people who are starting to express that and educate and make people aware, people are like, wow, never thought of it that way, So, and it's interesting too. A mutual friend of ours, Matt Dwyer, and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and Matt's been very vocal and about it, but he was talking to me and he goes, he was in Boston at like dusk, and he looked up at this alleyway that was very dim lit. And before he walked up, he thought to himself, if I was black, would I be comfortable going up here? And the fact that he took that time to think that way, says a lot, because that's how life is for me and so many other people. Like, there's no way I'm going to walk up a dimly lit alleyway in Boston at that time, because people would just be like, what's going on? What are you doing? And we've seen some of the results of that. So, as far as, just to get back to the original question, lacrosse, I think it's come a long way, and I love social media and connecting to so many more people of color, Black, Latinx. I think that's great, but I still think we have a ways to go.
Well, you bring up a point. We talked to Chaz a few weeks ago, and I thought he illustrated some really interesting points. And one of the points that he brought up was like, look, I get pulled over. He's like, they don't know that I play lacrosse, that I'm like predominant, just like you said. And people in Hingham maybe know that, but not if they're not connected to the lacrosse community or who you are or why you're there. And he brought up the point. He's like, would something like this have to happen to me for my friends to really understand what's going on here? And I thought that was really like eye-opening. And Trevor Baptiste wrote an article in US Lacrosse where he had a run-in with the police, and I was just like, man, like, who would ever do that to Trevor Baptiste? Because I know him as a person. But I thought those are just two really unique perspectives where you don't have that benefit of the doubt of like the badge of, I played for the Cannons, I'm a member of the lacrosse community here, I'm a coach and a father to Hingham residents. Like that's so hard in that moment. So I think, like you said, having that perspective is key, that more people can kind of take a second to try to have some empathy about who everyone is, no matter what they look like.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I thought that that NFL commercial was powerful. When they all came on and just said, "What if I was George Floyd?" All these guys that you see on Sundays and are big fans of, and you're looking at them like, And I thought that was a very powerful call to action for sure.
Well, we can let's dive into some videos. Got to show some video here. We'd be remiss not to show a little bit of BD making some saves. So set the stage here. 1992. We got Syracuse versus North Carolina. You still there, BD?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Wow.
Look at those buckets.
So what do we got here? We got a game in the Dome. Do you remember what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, this was it's my first start in the Dome. It was electric. It was. We end up losing this game. Tom Marachek came from behind the goal and basically took off. I'll never forget this. Dove from behind, through the crease, and like dunked it in the corner. And I'll never forget the sound of the crowd. It was so freaking loud. And right then and there, I was like, okay, I'm a little rattled. I need to settle down. But yeah, I wore 33, Barney Aberns number, because I don't know if we lost my number 2 or if it didn't get washed. I can't remember. But yeah,
you only wore 33 for this specific game.
For this game, yep.
Okay, can I just say the fall down move? If you fall down on offense and keep the ball, guaranteed to get past your guy. Like every time, if you fall down with the ball on your stick and you keep the ball on your stick, you're getting past your guy. It's unbelievable how often that works.
This is awesome. I gotta check this game out. I haven't seen this one. Yeah.
So who are some of the studs out here?
You got Matt Ritter on attack, Marachek, Jamie Archer, Lockwood is obviously out there, 22, Colesley, Finn for Cuse, Beardsley on defense. I want to say was Saran there yet in goal? I know he was there my senior year, but yeah, junior year he was too. Yep, because he was there. Yeah, this was a we always played the second or third game of the season. So this was a big tilt for us. You get fired up for the Qs. They got us this year, and then my senior year they came down to Carolina and we put a little spanking on them, 10-3. So that was nice payback for sure.
We'll fast forward here.
Fast forward here. Messenger right there, number 12.
Look at those shorts on the ref, looking good. What did
I
this?
thought you definitely had the dive goal queued up for me.
Let's see. Is it the game winner? Oh,
Oh,
no.
it was in the quarter. Ryan Wade right there, Eric Saramet, Dan Donnelly, Steve Spears, number 14, JD Kid right there, Johnny Webster from BL right there, number 15.
Oh, that's a muffin there. That's a free clear.
That's popcorn. That's popcorn. Yeah. Yeah. John Winship right there, bringing the ball down.
You stay in touch with most of the guys on your team. It sounds like you guys have a pretty tight unit.
Yeah, we do. We actually, once this whole COVID thing started, like a lot of guys did, right? We hopped on a few Zoom calls and just caught up, which was good. Obviously, we're all getting older. Vern Reed right there, coming off the field for Cuse. We're all getting older, so we just try to stay in touch and talk about the good times. That was a nice save on Lockwood.
Nice save, BD. Yeah.
Whereabouts was that dive goal?
I can't remember.
Of course not.
I think you missed it. I think it was like the first or second goal of the game because Ricky Kramer scored, I think, the first goal, and then I think Marichek had the second goal. He dove for the. We don't have to find it though. I'm sure we got other things to do.
What's your recall on plays and games? Do you remember each play exactly as it happens, or are you kind of spotty here or there?
I mean, I'm 48 years old, so I wouldn't say I remember each play as it happens, but just watching this, a couple of these clips that you just showed me brings me back to some of the moments in that game that were big. I do remember key plays. I'll never forget first year of Major League Lacrosse. We're playing in the semifinals and playing against the Bayhawks, and we lost by 1, but they had a man up, and I watched this play on film over and over again. They circle it round once, and then they get it back to Marky Millen down in the bottom left corner, and he's been wide open every single time. And every single time he sort of did his little fake to that lower corner and then dip and dunk and then bring it back near pipe. And I just, played it in my mind over and over again. So when he got the ball one-on-one with me, I sort of gave him a hard dip to the stick side low, and then I came back up and popcorn him right there one-on-one. So things like that stick in my mind, especially when it's against a good friend like that.
Yeah, you guys must have battled through so many different sports and years, and it's kind of cool. You guys have probably been going after each other since middle school, right? It sounds like even Little League.
Yeah, we used to. He threw me a curveball when I was 11 years old, and I took it over the center field fence, and I never let him forget about that too.
Love it.
But he will say, if in his defense, he struck me out 2 times right before I hit that home run. So he had a nasty curveball, nasty curve.
And I think a story that I think I kind of knew, but I've never seen. I don't know if you've seen a clip of it. But in '93, you actually broke your neck during a game, right? You weren't carted off. You came back. I think you finished the game, didn't you?
Yeah.
Playing. But what happened there?
As you can see by a lot of the clips that are being circulated, I was very aggressive. I think that's just my midfielder in me that if I made a save and there was a loose ball, I was going to come out and get it, or come out and put you on your back, one or the other. And so It was in the first quarter against Hopkins. I want to say Milford Marchand. It was a fast break. Milford kept it, took a shot, off stick, nice save, pushed it out to my off stick side. Ball scoots out. All of a sudden, I just dart after it to try to pick it up and push transition. All of a sudden, this big 6'5" monster just appears out of nowhere, and I was Terry Reardon. And it just happened so quickly. I kind of like just jumped and kind of leaned into him to try to bump him off the ball. Like I've done it before. You bump someone off the ball, then you pick it up and go. And it was just a weird angle. And the way he came at me, and just we hit, and I hit from the side of my neck, and I just dropped down and literally couldn't move for like 45 seconds. Chuck Bresci came over to me and he was like, "BD, come on, get up. We need you. Let's go, BD. Come on. We need you." I'm like, "Chuck, I can't move." And all of a sudden, everyone just came on the field and went through all that. And then, bam, I got feeling back in my fingers. But something was wrong. We knew something was wrong. So I didn't play the rest of the first half, doing all tests on me and stuff like that. But, halftime, I came out and I warmed up a little bit. I wasn't, I knew I wasn't myself, but I felt like I could play. So we came back in the second half, and I played. I didn't play great, made some saves, but we ended up winning. We beat Hop. But then after that, they took me to get tests and everything. I did MRI and came back negative. And then on Tuesday, I did a CAT scan because I remember we were getting ready for Virginia to go up to Virginia. And that's where they found I had 2 fractures in my C6 vertebrae. So
I can imagine like 2.5 hours after that game where it happened, right? You have the adrenaline pumping, you're fired up. That's how it always. And then you're like, was it just like, could you not move? I mean, obviously you can move, but were you like, oh my God, something's really wrong?
It was just discomfort. Like, it's like, if you've ever broken a bone, it's that agonizing throbbing, you know what I mean? And it was just like, you could feel it. I'm just lucky I didn't do anything stupid, and like, if I would have just like fell down the wrong way or hit my head again, then it could have been permanent. So I was very fortunate.
How scary were those kind of 45 seconds where you're like, I can't move anything, or did you not even have a chance to like process the information kind of in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it was, when you think back on it, you're like, holy smokes, it was pretty scary. But you're exactly right. It was just the 40 seconds felt like an eternity, first of all. But it was kind of like you didn't really have time to process it. You're like, what's going on? How come I got to play? That's the first thing in your mind as as an athlete. You guys know you want to get back on the field and help your team win. So I'm like, I got it. All right, what's going on? And then once it came back, every test I passed, and that's why they were comfortable at the time putting me back in. Nowadays we know once anything happens to the neck, it's like, on a board and you're going to the hospital. So unfortunate situation, but I was very fortunate that I was able to walk off the field, and here I am today. So
yeah, and then you had this this great career at UNC, won a national championship, and I guess you went on to play some club lacrosse afterwards, right? Because before that, you graduated well before the MLL had actually started. Not well before, a couple of years before the MLL had actually started. And then but what and then you coach college right out of school, right? That was your first job.
Yep. So I actually so after my senior year, I stayed on at Carolina, finished up in December, and I coached for a year down there just to sort of get my feet wet in the coaching world. And then Coach Tony Seaman called down to Carolina, spoke to Coach Klarman, got my number, and invited me to come up to Hopkins and work with John Marcus in '95. And that was, if you remember, that was the year we were undefeated, had a great squad, one of the best offenses ever. And we ran into a hot goaltender.
You're going to call him a hot goaltender? That's how you're going to label him?
I mean, he was hot. He was on fire. I mean, come on. Doc and I have these conversations all the time. He's one of the best to ever play the game. But we also lit his butt up. at we lit him up at Homewood. He went from, he did his guessing game. We put like 17 on him at Homewood. But
turns lacrosse into a game of rock, paper, scissors.
But at the semis, in College Park, he was on fire. He was in every one of our shooters' heads. He played the dock game. He had them thinking, overthinking. He was baiting them to shoot to the off stick, and he was just exploding to it. And then guys started thinking, what do I do? And they're talking about it during the freaking timeouts. Right then and there, I'm like, we're done. We're done.
Maybe at Homewood he's playing the long game. He's like, I'll guess wrong the whole first game, then the second game I'm ready to rock and roll.
Is that the best goalie performance excluding yourself, of course? Is that the best goalie performance that you've ever seen?
Oh, it's in the top 5. I mean,
top 5.
What's
in your top 5?
Sal Lacasio, world team down at Homewood. Insane. Just some of the battles that Sal and I had early years in the MLL. Same with Doc.
Not top 5 goalies, top 5 single games.
Okay. Sal Lacasio against Canada, Homewood. Okay. That was insane.
Yep.
Paul Schmoller versus North Carolina in that would have been my 88. That would have been my senior year. He was on fire. Got to give Quint the nod, believe it or not, against freaking Carolina. Doc is definitely in the top 3 or 4 that game. He was he was insane.
So you bring up Schmoles and your senior year. You're talking senior of high school, right? So were you just once you were locked in, were you like a junkie, a college lacrosse junkie, watching goalies, trying to study them? Was that like, were you following Schmoles? He's a Long Island guy, right? He's
Long Island guy. Yeah, Schmoles and Sal were the 2. Like I would say I followed mostly, just because they had different styles, but they both played. I don't say different styles. They both played similarly because they both sat back on the goal line and relied on just. Schmoles was so intelligent. He had quick hands, but he was just so smart the way he would talk about playing goal. Because I also had him at camp, and then I got to work camps with him as well. In between, after college and before MLL started. That's when I was on the camp circuit with Schmoles a lot, and I just, his style of play was it was insane. And he was so calm and just laid back and deliberate, and that's one of the big things I try to teach young goalies today. And it's that, it's like, if you can defeat this part and just chill out and just, rely on your athleticism and just play, you're going to be pretty darn good. It's when you start over analyzing and start thinking, and is when you can, you become your worst enemy, really. And then Sal was just Sal, man. He was, you look at Sal, you're like, and then you see him play, you're like, that's exactly what it was. He was insane. His hands were so quick, and he just played his angles so well. And they were both great communicators and great leaders.
Well, you talk about those early years, the club years, and then the early years of the Cannons. Let's pull up. This has a smattering or a mix of both Cannons and some Carolina clips, but this is an awesome video that Pal Lacrosse put together. You guys
shout out Pal Lacrosse.
Yeah, shout out to the Pal boys.
Let's go. You guys got this? Look, get a clear look at it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So is this one of the championships here, Billy? I know they were talking about like last week and against the Lizards, you were crushing it.
No, so this was the pregame, like the hype video for the Lizards game. So that was against the Barrage.
Yeah, the Barrage would not have been in the championship in those days.
Well, the last spot of this year, it was between the Barrage and I. The Barrage and the Cannons, and we were both 3-10. We got the last spot because we beat them.
Who's it? Is this against Towson or UMBC here?
That's Towson in the national championship game my sophomore year.
Nice.
Clear.
Look at that outlet.
That's the dome that you just showed. This against Gettleman.
What talk about these early years of the MLL? You know, were you part of, like, I think you were part of telling Matt Dwyer like he should get a team in Boston, right?
Yeah. I was in that. We had a meeting, you know, with Dave Gross and Matt Dwyer, myself, Bill Adele. Who else was in that meeting from a player perspective? There's one other person who was involved, and we just talking about why we should bring a franchise to Boston, and you know, who some of the players would be, you know, that could potentially come to Boston and play. So yeah, we were sitting in Matt's kitchen. I'll never forget that. And that was sort of the start of the Boston Cannons. It was pretty cool to be a part of that.
And so you were on the team in 2001 was the first year, right? And then coached from 2006 to 2011. So you really saw the league from its infancy all the way through, and then eventually winning a championship in 2011. What were some of those early years like versus like when you were coaching? What was it like being on both sides of that coin?
Well, you know, I think the early years, you know, and no disrespect to anyone who was involved, but it was more like a glorified club. I mean, we had, you know, obviously we had great talent, but, you know, goalies were making games were like 20 to 21. I mean, there was ridiculous amount of scoring. That is a testament to the talent from offensive perspective, but it was hard to really play defense. I mean,
only 3 poles are allowed.
3 poles. Goalies were making anywhere from 18 to 25 to 20. I mean, you look at some of the records, right? It was like I had like a 31 save game, and then someone broke my record, had like a 33 save game. I think Doc finally had like a 34 save game. It's like seeing that much rubber. You know, I know it was hard to get everyone to Boston, but we, you know, you thought when we all played together, when I coached you guys, it was hard to practice. It was impossible to practice back then. So it was really like people just showed up on Saturday and put on a uniform and just went out and played lacrosse. That was it. But, you know, it hats off to the just, you know, being able to maintain to get to where, you know, the days where I started coaching, and then, you know, started thinking of it from a different perspective. And, you know, really 2011, obviously a very special year for all of us. You know, RB had 2 or 3, you know, prior to that. So, you know, that was a nice one for him, but, you know, he had all the rings. But it was just, for me, I really learned how to take input from some of the best players in the game and, you know, utilize that to coach. I think that was the really big step for me in 2011. Just, you know, and I attribute that to why we had so much success. You know, I mean, we had a great team, but every team is great, right? It's just, you know, the guys you have on the team and the buy-in and getting them to just, you know, roll together and do what we did, which was pretty sweet.
BD, if I'm not mistaken, you're the first class of the MLL, so you had to have been, you know, either the first black player or the first several, and you were the only black coach at our time there, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like
Brian Silcott had 1 year at
he did.
Dragons.
Okay,
yeah.
That's right. My apologies to Silly. You know, what was that transition like in terms of, now you'd coached at the collegiate level, but I think in terms of having, and a lot has been made right now in terms of the Division I level, you know, that transition from player to now coach, and how you had to kind of change your mindset, and I think what that means to the players that are on the team, maybe like a Johnny Christmas, that's like, it's just tremendous to have someone that's black in the position of authority, and also like within the greater kind of Boston community, if you're a black player and you're looking up and the Cannons coach is a black man.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a spot on valid point. I mean, it was really with all the stuff going down over the past, few weeks, obviously a lot of outreach from different folks, but hearing from guys like John Christmas, and I won't
Yeah.
share.
Sure. Yeah.
Just hearing from guys like that, and obviously a lot of comments on social media about what I represented as, like you said, Ryan, not only a player but a coach, and it's special, and I'm very thankful to have the opportunity, but I just hope that, like we talked about earlier, when one day we look on the sidelines and, we don't see 2 or 3 Browns sets of legs, but we see maybe half of the team, that's what I love to at a Division I perspective. But it's I do feel in some sort of a way, I need to be a role model to young Black lacrosse players, because it's and I know Trevor talked about this, and I think Jules did a nice piece on this, but when you're growing up playing this sport, you're not really mingling with your Black friends, because they're wondering why you're playing a sport that white guys are playing. So you are trending to hang more with the white guys, then all of a sudden you become, and for lack of better words, the token Black guy. And it's okay, right? That's sort of the message. You're an athlete first and foremost. You're a lacrosse player secondly. It doesn't matter what color of skin you are. If that's a game you love, you want to compete and play it, then by all means, go. Don't be held back because people don't think you belong.
Well, and to your point earlier about, like, I've heard the word exhausting as the only Black player, as the only Black coach, right? You feel like everyone directs all their questions at you, but it's, I guess, as you mentioned, it's kind of part of the responsibility now of having those uncomfortable conversations, but also leading those uncomfortable conversations. And so, I think that to what you said about guys calling you, and I think it means a lot to obviously everyone who gets to interact with you, but for us to get that perspective from someone that we respect, got to win with. And I started playing that clip from the 2011 championship game, but I think just hearing all these different perspectives is what really is so helpful for Ryan and I, as white, middle-aged, not quite yet, younger.
I'll take middle age. It's fine. I'll own it. It's fine. I'm
early middle-aged white guys, but having that perspective from someone that we respect so much and got to learn so much from, I think is really huge.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's you guys are obviously are in a position where you can help influence so much because of the amount of kids you work with and touch on a daily basis. So, having conversations with guys like myself and Chaz and Kyle, and just that generation and players of color help you guys sort of, be good. It's the word I'm looking for. Just good voices.
Voices.
People. You are good people, but just have that voice and carry that voice along. And obviously, if you see something, I mean, how now a Black player or a person of color coming into your program may feel. He may feel ostracized because he doesn't have, it's not too many of him like him playing. So, how do you then engage everyone around? And we talked about team sports is different, but, coming into a club situation may be different than, playing on a team with guys for a full year at the college level, you know what I mean? So I just think, understanding what can potentially happen and being a voice and being able to sort of just help is what I'm saying. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and camp is a great. We've worked with Harlem Lacrosse and Bronx Lacrosse, and had players from both of those programs come up to our camps in Millbrook, and I think that is something that I've been hyper aware of when up there, is like being inclusive and making sure that those kids who maybe haven't been out of the city ever or very rarely, feel comfortable and at home. And so that's been a really special experience for me, getting to work with a lot of those players that we have. And that's been a partnership with them and the Berardi Foundation. So that's really hit close to home for me, but that's been a special one that I really look back on, like those relationships that I built with some of those players. And now, you got guys that are playing in college and doing really great things. And and it's awesome. It's awesome to see that coming to fruition.
Cool.
Well, we gotta watch a 2011 championship win. We can't. We'll wrap up the long form interview on some commentary. But did you? I mean, we talked about this. We had the shirts with the monkey, the monkey on the back. That we wanted to get the monkey off our back of finally getting a win. Did you know this 2011 season was going to be a special one?
Actually, the monkey was 2010, if you recall, and then so we didn't.
Apparently he didn't.
The monkey made a big impact. The timestamp did not.
Yeah. This year we just said nothing. We didn't do any shirts. It was just about those group of men in the locker room. I mean, we, like I said, we had talent. I think this year was just, I looked at it, like I said, you got a bunch of coaches around me, not just the staff, but I mean, everyone's got a high IQ, played at a high level, like I said, have won multiple championships at different levels. So it was just sort of a lot of listening, understanding, and then trying to implement what I was hearing with some of the decisions we made, whether it was rosters or little things like man up or man down or whatever it may be. But I think, even I said, you always say the players bought in, but it was also the staff bought in, and I think it was just it was a special group. We had a freaking kick-ass team, and it was good to finally get the monkey off our backs. That's for sure.
Even if we didn't have the shirts to sell.
Man, you need to fact check them before you get to the interview.
PD,
this was late at night. Research was happening. This is after the kids are in bed. It was a long day. I definitely need a fact checker. My dad has offered to do the fact check.
His dad has offered, and we should probably now take him up on that.
I'm more of a big picture guy in these interviews. I need someone that's getting down to the nitty gritty details.
That's awesome.
Well, BD, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspectives and getting to watch some awesome highlights for the old Bacharach lace-ups. We always end on some quick hits, so gotta get your thoughts. Best place to play a lacrosse game?
Denver, Colorado, Mile High Stadium.
Did you play there in your MLL career or just coach there?
Just coach there, but it was just awesome.
Yeah, we had some good ones with the Cannons. I feel like we always
had some good ones. Huh?
That was fun.
How about the shooter that always had your number, or who you hated shooting on you the most?
Oh, Gary Gate.
He's probably on a lot of goalies lists. We're in your kind of greater area, so like Hingham extended, we'll call it. Yes.
Okay.
South Shore.
Yep.
South Shore.
Okay, South Shore. I'm such a local. Totally should my. What's the hidden gem eating spot that's not in it's I ask you as opposed to some guide or some of this. And not the top spot you send, just give me the spot that you would actually go to.
Wow, that's a good question. That's a good one. You definitely put me on the spot with that one. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to give you a real truthful answer because I'm pressed for time. So what I'm going to say is South Shore, the spot where I would send a good buddy to get a good meal, is going to be the Snug.
Love it already.
And you're going to either get the steak tips or you're going to get a burger.
Okay.
Boston people love the steak tips. I love steak tips too, but that's a big Boston thing, I feel like.
You had me at Snug.
Great pint of Guinness too.
Perfect.
21 and over.
I'm middle-aged if you weren't following along.
I know, I'm saying for in case people younger are going to listen to this.
Sure. Best teammate that you've ever had?
Oh boy, wow. Shucks. Excuse me. Wow. I mean, Brian Silcott.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Brian Silcott.
We've let some people kind of like, oh, I've got a bunch, but I'm glad that there's a couple people who have stuck to their guns and picked one.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
I had a lot of great teammates. We all had. It was the relationship we had was pretty special on and off the field.
All right. Well, I know you got to run, and we appreciate your time. But if you had to pick one lacrosse memory that, if you could only keep one, it was your best of all time, what is that going to be?
Most memories revolve around championships. But I would say the best memory was graduating with my boys from North Carolina in 1993. We had a big class, 14 seniors, and we just had a really, really special bond. So, it's not a lacrosse memory per se, but it's those guys who I went through 4 years of school with and just became like brothers. That's why we're so tight today. So that would be it. Class of 93.
Class of 93.
Awesome. Well, BD, my first real championship was winning with you, and so you'll always have a special place in my heart for leading us there. And it's been great getting to know you over the years, and just can't say thank you enough for coming and sharing your perspectives here and watching some old school lacrosse. So thanks again for coming on. It was great catching back up.
I appreciate the invite. Thank you very much for having me on, and love to do something else with you guys. So keep in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we will. It's we kind of got into this thinking we were just going to be teaching about lacrosse, and as we all find as coaches and teachers and mentors, like, we're just using lacrosse as a vehicle for life. So appreciate you and you coaching us and the lessons you taught us, and whatever is imparted, whether it's lacrosse or life, if people kind of listen to this.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, BD.
It's good seeing you.